If we can agree on anything, this word has 5 letters, SABOT, and 2 syllables. And that's about it. Today, you've got a first-class ticket to Crazy Town as we discuss a word that no one seems to agree to a single pronunciation for.
SABOT.
Sabot, French.
Sabot.
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 When we hear a new word for the first time, maybe when we're learning how to talk, or maybe later on from our teacher, that becomes the way we pronounce it for the rest of our life, and it almost becomes part of our DNA. And then when we hear it pronounced differently, something in our brain just snaps. And for some people, it reaches a level of offensiveness where it's pretty much like their wife calling them by the wrong name. This word may very well hold the world record for having the most pronunciations for a 5-letter word. Let's first look at the pronunciation that I use, which everyone says I'm saying wrong, and that is SABOT. Less common is the pronunciation SABOT with an accent on the second syllable. Now, I first heard the word not from my mom or a teacher, but from watching the Discovery Channel.
The 120mm gun has 2 main types of ammunition: the high-explosive anti-tank or heat round, and the armor-piercing, fin-stabilized, discarding SABOT tracer, known as the SABOT.
And just like that, millions of other people hearing the word for the first time also began calling it SABOT.
M865 training SABOT round. You know it's a training SABOT by the fact that it is blue, whilst war shots are going to be black.
Impact XP SABOT slugs here.
Armor-piercing, discarding SABOT.
And that is the SABOT slug, the AccuTip SABOT slug.
Yep. You'll hear of APFSDS, or armor-piercing, fin-stabilized, discarding SABOT.
Or a lead-free copper SABOT round.
The Winchester Partition Gold SABOT slug.
Friends, the shell needs a casing, or a SABOT, which is made out of a softer metal.
The SABOT slugs cost me $7 for 5 rounds.
So I'm not alone in my pronunciation of SABOT. In fact, we can't say it's an American pronunciation because I'm pretty sure I heard some interesting accents in those examples.
Subscale models of the missile shape put it in a sabot to allow it to fit inside of a larger artillery piece, and he fired these models.
Now, this is a Canadian pronunciation and probably closest to the proper French pronunciation, but very few people that I've run across say it that way.
The new premier AccuTip bonded SABOT slug from Remington.
So now we have SABOT, which is pronounced quickly, almost making it into a single syllable word. Again, SABOT as opposed to SABOT.
I use the Winchester Supreme Elite Dual Bond Sabot slugs, and the reasons, well, they're simple.
Honey, I don't care about your reasons. Just bring your SABOT to my Chevy Silverado.
They're a 1-ounce SABOT slug, solid copper, tipped bullet. Let me show you what these look like.
SABOT is a French word that means shoe or clog. It refers to a device that surrounds a smaller projectile.
And now we have SABOT. Even the creepy AI voices pronounce it that way. Right or wrong, a lot of people use that pronunciation, and they may have heard it first from their uncle or maybe the guy at the gun store.
Armor-piercing, fin-stabilized, discarding SABOT. It's a kinetic energy projectile fired from a smooth...
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the workbench. This evening we're going to be loading 500 grain SABOT slugs.
The salesperson behind the counter is going to ask you, do you need rifled slug or SABOT slugs?
And now we have SABOT, similar to rabbit.
Premier AccuTip bonded SABOT slugs. I believe
it would be so heavy the propellant couldn't get it moving fast enough. APDS, armor-piercing discarding SABOT, solved this problem.
A rifled slug or a SABOT slug? Or as I called it for years, a SABOT slug.
And that's the Brennecke Super SABOT, and this time I've got it in the 3-inch Magnum.
And high-density plastic SABOT yields tremendous accuracy. This is a SABOT.
I have to admit that SABOT is widely used across the industry.
Nose cap. After nose cap, we have sabos, which discard when the shell leaves the barrel of gun. The discarding sabo leaves the barrel.
Now, this is a very subtle difference, but it emphasizes sabo.
Remington 20 gauge 3-inch SABOT slug. So first let's start with what the heck does SABOT mean in a round? So think of it like a shuttle launch, and that should bridge the gap visually.
Well, I think my bridge collapsed just trying to wrap my head around that description. And that's probably the first time I've heard anyone in the industry call it a SABOT. Now, I've gotten hundreds of these particular comments, so we can't leave those people out either. A lot of people say that the word comes from sabotage, so you say it the same way as sabotage.
Therefore, in English, it is pronounced rather similarly as sabotage. Sabotage from French, sabotage. Pretty straightforward once you know.
So according to the commenters, we should be calling it sabot, or maybe even sabot. After all, it's pronounced like sabotage.
For reference, this is a word of French origin. In French, this is said as sabot, sabot.
And according to this guy, sabot is the absolute correct way of saying it. Now, I was certainly surprised to hear so many different pronunciations for this simple word. Now, some pronunciations are more proper than others. Many are improper, but because they're used so widely, they've kind of become accepted, at least in some circles. And for me and millions of others, saying Sabo, as we heard it on the Discovery Channel, we thought that was a credible source. Right or wrong, that's how a lot of people say it. And it's just ingrained in our brain that way. Now, I don't have the authority to tell you how you're supposed to pronounce the word. I've just accepted the fact that people say the word a lot of different ways. I've simply come to the conclusion that no matter how I pronounce the word, there's going to be people lecturing me in the comment section on how I am mispronouncing it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Unsubscribed.